All right, can everyone hear me all right? Great. Joel, could you cue up the pictures, please? So first off, I want to say thank you. Thank you to the congregation for sending us out to the reservation. This was my first trip. Anita's made a few more, and Garrett as well, and they showed us the ropes, but it was an awesome experience, and I think I can say that on behalf of every one of the team members. It was a joy to go out and be able to make those connections and to spread the gospel, and I just really appreciate you all giving us that opportunity. So thank you very much, Bel Air. We went out in partnership with Navajo Missions Incorporated. Behind me you can see a snapshot from their Facebook page. They are on Facebook, so you can check them out and see the work that they're doing out there throughout the year. And that's a great organization. They've been at work there on the reservation for over 20 years now. And there's some even new exciting things that are happening right now that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Next slide, please. So here is the long trek that we made all the way out to Arizona, starting here in Gulfport. It took us 2 days to get out there, and we stayed overnight in Texas and finished up the trip the next day. Over 1,400 miles of a drive, and the church van held up, so it was great. So we took 2 days to get out there. There in the kind of the northeastern corner of Arizona is where we were. The name of the town we stayed in was called Ganado, Arizona. Next slide, please. Here is a picture of the Navajo Reservation. This is the largest reservation in the United States of Native Americans, and it's a huge unreached people group that we're trying to reach out to, and why Navajo Missions was established. You can see kind of in the, let's see here, the upper right of those blobs and circles, that is the town of Ganado there. Down to the south is a little, I guess I would say, village called Clagato, where Anita worked, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about that. Down to the south and west is another little village called Cornfields, and Garrett's going to tell you about his work out there, and Thomas too, I think. And then out to the west of Ganado was the site that I worked at, called Steamboat. So there's 4 different VBS sites that we kind of spread out to in the afternoons to go do our classes. But we all stayed the nights and kind of worked out of Ganado, which was the big city, I guess I'd call it, but it wasn't real big. Next slide, please. It took about 30 minutes for us to get out to each of those sites one way, 30 minutes. There is a picture of the bustling intersection, the main intersection in Ganado. It's the intersection of 2 highways, and right behind the cluster of buildings that you see in the background there, that's the hospital, and our site in Ganado is right behind the hospital there. Next slide, please. Here's a look at where we stayed. This is the dorms. We had about 80 people, give or take, staying in the dorms, all up on the second floor. The first floor was reserved for some of the medical services that they did there in Ganado. But we were staying up on the second floor of the dorm. The building was probably built back in the 50s, I guess. It was in pretty good condition, but it was kind of Spartan. Next slide, please. Here's a look at the dorm rooms where we stayed. They had bunk beds. I think we had 6 people in my room. Other rooms had 2 or 4 people. It worked. It wasn't super comfortable, but it worked. Slide, please. Right across the street from our dorm was a Presbyterian church that was one of the main places that we worked out of. They did host the Ganado VBS there at that church, but it also had the kitchen where we cooked our breakfasts and lunches, and the fellowship hall where we ate our meals. And we also had meetings and worship in the sanctuary there right across the street from the dorm at the church in Ganado. Next slide, please. There's a snapshot of everybody that we had, as I said earlier, about 80 people, and we had folks from many different areas, some up near Jackson, Mississippi, of course, both us and folks from Michael Memorial out of Gulfport, and then we had several churches from the Memphis area as well, Memphis, Tennessee. So it was, I think, maybe about 7 or 8 different churches and about 80 people overall. The man in the front left there in the yellow shirt, his name is Gene, and Anita can tell you a little bit more about Gene later, but he's a key figure in the Navajo Missions Incorporated, and a man who really has a heart for taking the gospel to the Navajo reservation. Slide, please. All right, so I'm going to turn it over now that you kind of got the introduction of where we all were based out of, to some of the other members. They're going to tell you about their experiences out at their different VBS sites, and our prayer is that you guys are encouraged to hear how God is at work out there on the reservation, and you'll probably hear a little bit as well about how God worked in us while we were out there as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Anita.
Well, can anyone guess why they call steamboat steamboat? I'm looking at the picture. That's pretty much how the Navajo language works. They use descriptions for everything. As Matt mentioned, I was at Clagato. That's where I have been since the beginning of I started in 2006 going, and that's when we stayed in tents. So the dorms are really nice compared to the tent. Gloria can attest to that. So, several things I was burdened about this time, not that I haven't been before, but I went to church at Clagato Sunday morning, and that's the area that I was going to be keeping the nursery for Vacation Bible School that week. And there were 8 people in that church, and there were some mission team members there, but there were 8 people. One of those was the minister, one was his minister's wife, and another one was a minister. So the churches are dying. I can remember when I went out there in 2006, and that little sanctuary was pretty much packed. So that was sad to see that. As I mentioned, I kept the nursery out there. There were 3 ladies, the moms that were out there, that I really came home with a burden for this time. One of them, I'm going to mention by name, is Hawaii. Her grandfather founded the church there at Clagato. Hawaii is probably one of the more Americanized Navajo. She has a good education, but she was raised by her grandparents and her aunt because she had an alcoholic mother. She is a school nurse at the Wide Ruin School, which is another community over one from Clagato. She mentioned to me that she is the only Christian there in that school. She said that the Navajo religion is really trying to take over. This is a brand new school. They just did a dedication for it a few months back, and a medicine man is one that presided over the dedication of the new school. So there are needs out there. So if y'all can remember Hawaii and her job and her trying to spread the fire out there. She also and her family, as I mentioned, their struggles with alcoholism, not her personally, but her husband comes from an alcoholic family. And I did find out that the Indians have a predisposition to being alcoholics. They do not metabolize sugars like we do. So they're just prone to be alcoholics. Another mom that I met probably the second year out there, Christina, and I've seen her off and on again the past few years. She has 5 children. I'm really burdened for her. She is a Christian, but she is a struggling Christian. Her spouse died about 1.5 years ago. He fell off a cliff. There again, he was an alcoholic. And Gloria, you've probably kept Christina's. I know you probably remember Sean T. from the nursery. We had him. Yeah. So Christina also struggles with alcoholism. She's been in rehab. She's been in jail. She's now trying to keep custody of her 5 children and dealing with trying to get housing out there. The guy that did the van run for her area, said that she comes out of a little shack with her 5 children and her special needs sister. She lives there, I know, with an alcoholic sister and brother, so no telling how many others are in that little house. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the living conditions out there. Another young mom, little 19-year-old Taylor. Monday, she wouldn't leave her baby with me. Tuesday, she wouldn't leave her baby with me. She'd come out there and visit for a little while, but not talk. She'd do diaper changes, bottle feeding, but just very hesitant. Well, Thursday, she came and just kind of opened up and had lots of questions for me. She stated that her mom goes to a Mormon church and stated that we are trying to brainwash her. So the Mormons are very active out there along with the Jehovah's Witness. I was able to talk to her. I would spend a good bit of time between dirty diapers and crying babies between Thursday and Friday, but I still felt like I left things unfinished with Taylor. So if y'all will please remember her, I am going to try and correspond with her through mail. I love the Navajo people and I love this land. Look forward to going back. I hope Bel Air continues to support this mission by either praying, giving, or going. To me, the distant view out there is best. It's beautiful land, but the view does swallow the dirt and the misery out there. There's so much poverty, drug abuse, alcoholism. On a positive note, I talked to Gene Kennedy right before I came here just to kind of get an update. He really bragged on the missionaries that were sent out there from Bel Air this year. What a good part of the team they made up. We had over 280 in attendance for all of the Bible schools, more than 20 salvations. And then another praise we have is on Mark and Penny Williams, who went out there to be full-time missionaries. They attended Michael Memorial. They had their first service at the Cornfields Church, which is the church Navajo Missions now has, and there were 23 in attendance at that first church service. So praise the Lord on that one. And then I'm going to share the first Sunday we were there, I went out handing flyers in a little housing project area. Handed out, saw two little boys walking on the street, gave them a flyer about Vacation Bible School, and they took it, and I went on to go to the house across the way, and they said, "Oh no, don't go to that house." And I turned around and I'm like, "Why?" You know, I'm thinking pit bull dogs, mean Indians, you know, there was some reason. They said, "No, they're Christians." And I'm like, "That's okay, I'm a Christian too, that's why I'm here." He said, "No, they're Baptist."
This was my second year going to Arizona for the Navajo mission trip. It was a stressful and life-changing week. God started opening my heart during one of the team meetings. The youth were singing songs for worship time, and we were singing Oceans, Where Feet May Fail. During the bridge, I almost started crying because the lyrics. I felt God was talking to me. The lyrics read, "Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters, wherever you would call me. Take me deeper than my feet could ever wander, and my faith will be made stronger in the presence of my Savior." God called me and everyone else, a part of the Navajo mission team, to go and tell the Navajo Indians about Him and His love for them. God handpicked a certain team for His glory. These people are amazing for answering the call to do missionary work. The site I was teaching at was called Cornfields, where Mark Williams and his family, who are from here, answered God's calling and moved to the Navajo reservation to preach at Cornfields. I taught preschool through first grade. These kids melted my heart. From day one, we taught them Jesus loves me with sign language, and they memorized it and sang it for the church on the last day. They really loved it. On Friday, the Cornfields team got in one last prayer circle, and the site leader asked for 3 volunteers, so I volunteered. During the prayer, God was talking to me, and I started crying. When God calls you to go somewhere and do something, go. He will change your life. Matthew 16 through 20. Matthew 28, 16 through 20. Now, the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw Him, they worshipped Him. But some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." Have faith in God and answer His calling.
So this was my first year going on the Navajo trip, and it's safe to say that I had a good time, but at the same time, missed you guys. And there's nothing like Southern hospitality. Yeah. I missed you guys. He died. I was talking about, there we go. You guys can hear me, right? We're good? Okay. So, I missed a lot of things from here. I missed you guys. I missed sweet tea. They didn't have sweet tea out there. I had a sugar loaf the entire time. Yeah, but I did. Hello. Okay. So, things I enjoyed there was it was dry. It was really dry, so you didn't sweat. I came back home, got out the car, I'm like, what is this stuff? Like, that's sweat. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. And I had to work the next day, I was just dripping. I did not miss this at all. But I did miss the air. Up in the elevation, you take 3 steps and you're out of breath, exhausted. It's not fun. Made a lot of friends there. I was in a room with Thomas and 2 other guys I met there, and we had a fun time that first night. We were up all night long. Thomas bought a blowgun, and my other friend brought a crossbow, and there was a pillow, so we figured, oh, yeah, we can just shoot that. So we did that for a while. And I had my guitar out, started playing my guitar, and somebody from another church next door came over and asked to borrow it, and we ended up having a praise and worship little meeting, gathering thing in the hallways. There was a lot of people singing, praising Jesus, and the beds were, as Mr. Matt said, they were pretty Spartan, just a cushion on a short bed. For me, that was a problem. I tried sleeping on the first night on the top bunk, and my feet were about that far off the edge, and I would be afraid I'd roll over and fall off, so I just ended up sleeping on the floor. That was easier. But, so the second day we were there, we went around to hand out flyers and tell people about VBS. We went to all kinds of houses. The first house we went to, we accidentally knocked on a sick man's door, and we kind of got chewed out because he's supposed to be sleeping and everything. So being my first time, I was kind of like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And I had my friend Brandon there to help me, and Thomas helped me some too. And we got all the flyers out. And at one point, the Navajo religion has this thing where they have this little, really short, really small hut on the ground. And what they would do is they would make a fire, put rocks on top, and then throw the rocks into the hut in a little hole, and they'd all go in there and sweat. And that's supposed to symbolize them sweating out their impurities and getting rid of their filthiness or something. And so we were going to invite them to VBS, and they said, oh, well, let's come tell you about our religion. So I got to go into a sweat house, what they called it, and learn about their religion, and it was interesting. It was weird. And they would talk for a long time about how they worship the earth, but at the same time worship Jesus. And they tried saying something about, in the Bible, Jesus said he worshiped the earth when he broke the bread. And luckily I remember that well enough to know that that didn't happen. And I explained to them that he prayed to God to bless it and break the bread. And they kind of wondered about it. And then we had to leave. And one of them did end up coming, and he brought his nephews. So the next day, geared up, ready for VBS. We had stayed up all night. I was excited. I was tired. I was very tired. So everyone had gone off to their separate places, and we had a couple hours, and I figured, I'll just take a quick nap. Set my alarm on my iPad. Turned out my iPad was still on home time. So it started at 4, and I woke up, kind of got shoved. Wake up, you're late. Huh? I realized it was 4 o'clock, and I wasn't there. So I had to kind of sleepily grab my stuff and go out there, and barely awake, play Jesus Loves Me, and that kind of stuff. And then after that, I'm a cook, so I didn't have time to go bring my stuff back to the actual room. And after VBS was over, I came to grab my guitar, my iPad. My guitar was there, my iPad wasn't. So somebody had stolen that, and it took us a couple days. We eventually got it back. So that was good. Praise, yes, Jesus is awesome. But yeah, and I started off assembly director and cook. We made hot dogs and bologna sandwiches all week. I was very tired of bologna and hot dogs after eating that for 4 or 5 days. It was got to the point where you could smell and go, oh, gross. And I ended up being a preschool security guard. Those kids are a wild bunch of Indians. We had this, I was working with Mom because she was stressed out. There was 22 little preschool first graders and just her and another lady. And they did split up the classes, but they were crazy. They were insane. There was this train they had to hold on to. It was a rope they put their hand on and held on to when they walked places. At one point, the kids would just let go and run off. And now you have to chase all of them down, and they were exhausting. I was very exhausted. But at our camp where we were, it was definitely the nicest place. We had running water and fans and electricity, whereas the other ones, they didn't. So I guess that's how they start off the newbies. Say, here you go, kind of try this out. But then the next year, like, all right, here's the real thing. But so yeah, we got to have all the water we needed, all the food we could eat if we needed it. The kitchen was right there. Just show up, hey, I want some leftovers. Cook eat some leftovers. That was why I liked being the cook, because I knew everything. I was just, and when they would have burgers, I knew what the barbecue sauce was and no one else did. Yeah, so lots of friends, several of which got saved on that trip from the Collarville, I believe it was, church from Tennessee. So that was exciting. We had lots of fun, and I was exhausted, but it was totally worth the trip. And anybody that's been thinking about going, I definitely suggest that you try it again whenever we do it.
I'll be talking about the church that we went to, Cornfield, where I was staying, and did recreation. So those kids out there are the most physically fit kids you will ever meet. We had a swing set, which didn't have any swings on it, but one. So we had one kid at a time on the swing set. The V thing that would hold them up, the metal poles, these kids would scale them, climb all the way across it, and just do it again all day. They would play soccer all day. What it would take the energy out of me for 15 minutes, they could do for forever, because they don't have anything out there to do. Speaking of that, they also do other stuff they're not supposed to, because there is nothing out there, like drugs and alcohol. So before we went out to our sites every day, we would go out and survey the land. Like, we would go house to house and ask the people for their information. We were going to send them packets of information about the new pastor out there, Mr. Mark, who does like weddings and stuff like that. So we're going to let them know. So we're trying to get their P.O. boxes and phone numbers and stuff like that. We went to this one house, and it was kind of shady when we went up there in the first place. It was pretty shady. We get out, we talk to the guy, we ask him for his information, and he's really nice. We ask him if there's anyone else living with him. He says no, he definitely does not want to talk to you. Turns out that guy is a leader of one of the Navajo religions who did some bad stuff to the Navajo people 3 years back, like burn a church and try to raid the village. On the way back from talking to the guy, we noticed his trash can. And in the trash can, they had meth kits of how you make meth and heroin bags all over the place. We looked in the back, and they had a weed farm, which is actually legal out there because you're on a Navajo reservation. We get back to the van, try to get out of there as fast as possible. We get back, and it's just pretty much an amazing experience that we had. And that's just one of the things that stuck out to me. Thank you for sending us out there. It's a great time that we had. And anybody that was thinking about going, couldn't go, they need to go next year, because it is an amazing trip. Thank you.
I do thank you too for sending us. I've been wanting to go for several years because Rod had talked to us a while back, but Josh was always a little too little, and I just prayed about it. And then this year he said, "Mom, I think I want to go." And so I said, "Well, let's just do it." And then 2 Sundays ago, I sat here in this church service crying because I was leaving my little baby. And, I was just real emotional about it because I said, kids are supposed to leave you. You're not supposed to leave your kids. And I knew Steve had her and she was in good hands, but it's hard to leave your baby. And so anyway, Josh and I left on Monday and the Navajo team left on Friday. And we took the southern route. We went on I-10 all the way out to Tucson, and because we wanted Josh to see some things that he may not ever get to see again. So we went on out, and as we're driving through different areas, there are lava fields there near Flagstaff that I had no clue that you'd find lava like that stateside. I always heard about it in Hawaii. And he and I were just flabbergasted at just seeing it, driving through, and big old piles of lava all on the side of the road. And then we went to the north rim of the Grand Canyon, and were blessed by that because it's so beautiful, and saw a lot of bison, and I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of deer as we came out of it that night. We watched the sunset from the north rim. And then we were driving through the Navajo reservation to meet them at Window Rock. So we had to go through Ganado and keep going to Window Rock, which is the capital of the Navajo Nation. And that's where we met up with our team. But driving through the Navajo reservation, I was surprised that it's very flat with big rocks from erosion sticking up out of the ground. But being the wife of a power company person, I was looking at the power lines. And here, they run right alongside the road and everybody has power. But out there, you go for miles, you don't see a power line anywhere. And when you do see them, they're not on the side of the road unless you're in a town. They're out in the middle of the field. And a lot of the people out there, they have no power. They have big barrels in their truck where they go haul water to their house when they need water. And that's the way that all of the reservation is. The Navajo, the Hopi is right in the middle of the Navajo, like Navajo's a donut and they're in the middle. And so I was observing this as we were going out, and all of their houses, there's a lot of trailers, a lot of campers that they live in. The houses that some of them live in are all colored like the sand. So they kind of blend in when you do see a house. But just looking at that, and outhouses, they all have outhouses. Even some of the trailers we saw, like you might see not necessarily a travel trailer, but a house trailer, and they had an outhouse. So very, very primitive people. And but we met up with the team, and then we went to Ganado, and of course Josh and I were going to be at Ganado all week, and we went to the church service Sunday morning. And Randy, I appreciate what you did this morning, because that's what happened with us, and I think probably happens at all the church services out there, was there were older Navajo people that do not speak English, and so the pastor, everything he did was translated. So he gave us the sermon first in English, and then he gave the sermon in Navajo. And it was really strange singing Wonderful Words of Life in Navajo. And we looked at their hymn books, and they're all written in Navajo, and it was just real interesting. And to be in a church service and not be able to really sing was really strange to me. And Josh will tell you, I tried singing the nee and nee. It was just some really strange words. But before I had left, I had prayed for 3 things. I had prayed that I would be flexible, because Jean kept saying, you got to be flexible, you got to be flexible, and I'm not real flexible. So I prayed that I would be flexible, I would be useful. I told him, put me wherever you needed me to be, just put me there. That I used to teach 4 and 5-year-olds, but that's been 20 years ago. And and that I was more in a leadership role now in Bible school and things. And that my last prayer was that the kids, when I found out that I was going to be teaching the younger, it wound up being preschool and kindergarten, that they would see Jesus' love for them through me. And so before I left, I just posted one post on Facebook about supplies, and I was hit at the door that Sunday morning. Donna and Betty Lee and Tony and just a bunch of people, Anita, just started giving me stuff. And I had so much stuff that I was able to have. I said, I had so much stuff I could be flexible. The whole trunk of my car was filled with nothing but class stuff. And we had to put our luggage for us in the back seat. So Steve really thought I was kind of goofy. But I had enough stuff where I could be flexible. And when I got out there, the first day I had 20 preschoolers, as Josh said, and 4 of them were special needs. And it was me and a 9-year-old that was in charge of this class. And the 9-year-old was so overwhelmed, she would try to swing, and I'd have to say, honey, you're my helper. Miss Susan needs you to help push them on the swing, not get on the swing. And honey, you can't color during class. You have to help give them color. So I was really having to work with her. And then my 4 special needs children would run away, like Josh said. And it was just, you could even be looking at them and they'd shoot out the door and be gone. And I was just running after children all the time. And I was supposed to write a list of all the children I had the first day, and there are things information they collect on the children, their first and last name, who their mother is, their age, and if they're in school, and then you write any comments you have. Well, up till like 30 minutes before the end of the night, I had 3 children written down because I was so overwhelmed. And a lady that worked in the kitchen, she had seen us come in during supper, and so she had been working on trying to get into my classroom, and she got in there and was able to focus on my most critical special needs child, who he required one-on-one attention. And of course he kept jumping on her, so by the end of the night she had a neck ache, and so she couldn't come back anymore that week because her neck was so messed up. So the second day they sent me a girl named Jessica, who was an adult, and then her 12-year-old that was her helper. And so with the 4 of us, we divided up the class, and I had 10, and then she had 2 groups of 5. So each of those took a small room, and we did it that way. But we still had the runaways. They were running away from her because we did 2 special needs for her and 2 for me. And we still had the runaways. So I started begging for Josh. I said, please, I just need a young guy to run after these children. And I said, you can give us 2, that would be great. So by Wednesday, we had 2 guys that helped us. So she had a guy and I had a guy, and it was much better. But Wednesday we ate supper first. We got into supper, and I had like 3 of them bawling their eyes out because their cousins weren't there. They are very family-oriented people. They like to be with their family. They have cousins and all that are there, and if the cousin wasn't there, then they cried. So we wound up finding family, and then they didn't stay in our class. So Wednesday I had 14, because at that point my prayer had been, Lord, I just need some that will get what I'm saying. You know, all of these it was just crowd control at the beginning. And I wasn't sleeping, so it was just like things piling on top of each other. But it was better toward the end of the week. I had 14, 12, and 13 kids on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I wanted to tell you about a couple of them. There was one little boy named Leon that the beginning of the week, he wouldn't obey. You could tell he hadn't been in church. And Gene had talked to me, and he said, your primary goal is to teach them how to behave in church, how they're supposed to act, and to try to plant some seeds. And so, you know, the first time I saw them, they were sitting in the pews with their feet up on the pews, and feet in the pews, and standing up on the pews. And so I started right away saying, your bottom goes on the chair, your feet go on the floor. And so he got to where all I had to do was look at him. But by the end of Friday, by Friday, he was doing all of that without me having to say anything. and not running in the buildings. And like Josh said, they are wild Indians. They run free. Madison was another little child I had, and every day that she came during our assembly time, she was always hungry. And so some of these children, that's the only meal they have. And so, she was always hungry, she was always thirsty. So I was very grateful that Jean had planned for our class to be the first to eat. And as Josh said, hot dog one day, bologna sandwich with no dressing on it the next day. It kind of got old, but I was cramming it down my mouth because I knew I had 4 hours with these children. And they loved it. And so it was fun. They got to eat. I had a little girl named Leah, and she did not talk the first couple of days. And she was one of mine that you couldn't put her, we had little loops in the road, and we called it the choo-choo train that we went on, and we would chant our verses because, bless you, Jackie, you gave me lots of games. None of the games were working with those children other than chanting the verse. Every day we chanted the verse. Anywhere we went on that little choo-choo train road, we chanted it. And they got it. And Leah started talking on Wednesday. But Wednesday, we were talking, she said something Tuesday, and I was a little concerned because we were talking about Adam, and she said something kind of derogatory about men. And of course, my basics training started going off, concerned that maybe she had been abused. But Wednesday, she started talking, and she started memorizing her verses. And by Friday, she was telling me the verses from the previous days. And she wasn't running away. We learned if we held her hand, she would stay with us. And Josh and the other boy would put some of those runaways on their shoulders when we went anywhere. And that helped a great deal. One last little boy's name was Panda, I think. These children lie to you. They don't tell you their names. There was one boy I called Braden until Wednesday, and then my little kid that knew them all says, his name is not Braden, it's Ethan. And so then I'm changing the book, trying to get, but they do. They tell you all these names, and Panda was actually like Ferdinand or something like that. And because his dad came to pick him up on Thursday. He was a twin. His brother's name was Tristan. We got that right. But Panda was a special needs child too, and he was always running away. Well, during assembly time, we had a little cart, and the first couple of days they were trying to roll in the cart, so I made sure that was locked away on the third day. And I found that if I sat down on the front row and I put him between my legs, and he would put his little hands on the backs of my arms, and we would sing songs. And by Thursday and Friday, he started singing songs with me and moving his little hands. And he was controllable then. And I figured maybe he doesn't get touched. And that's what I've learned with a lot of them over the week is it was a trial and error kind of figure out what these kids need. And a lot of them need touch. And we did very basic Bible verses. The first one was like, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then I'm Wonderfully Made, where we talked about each of them being specially made by God. The third day was with the sin, and I knew they wouldn't understand sin, so we did Children Obey Your Parents and Everything. And that was the day that my little Leah started talking. And she said, children, obey your parents in everything. And then the fourth day we said, God cares for me. And then the last day we just learned Jesus loves me. So very simple, but they were remembering every day what we talked about. And with Leah, she showed up one day, and it was the day we were going to learn God cares for me. And she says, my mama doesn't love me. And I said, well, baby, your mama might have had a rough day. Sometimes mamas say things and they don't really mean them. I know your mama loves you. And then she just had a whole different attitude after that. She was much better. And so my children were just varied in all kinds of ways. We became a little family. By Friday, they were doing really well, and we had learned what to do with them, and they all seemed to be just happy. And like Thomas says, they are very active. They're very fit children where they run all the time. On this trip, Jay Rogers was our site leader. And one of the things that I was impressed with was, Jackie might remember, was how beautiful are the feet of those that, brings good tidings? Well, yeah, and so Thursday we're walking through the dorms because at the end of the day you're hot, you're tired, you're just filthy because the wind's blowing all the time, and even though you don't sweat, you're just covered in sand, and like my white capri pants on Friday were pink at the end of the day because the sand blowing so much. But we were walking the halls and I'm like, Jay, what is that smell? And he says, that's feet. And literally in the dorms by that time it was so stinky because it's everybody's stinky feet. And but it reminded me of that our feet were beautiful to God even though they were mighty stinky to us. And the showers, I don't know how the guys' showers was, but if you were in a shower and you heard a toilet flush, you had to sidestep real quick because you either get burned or get cold. And Anita knows but you learn what to do. So anyway, but we became a family, and I have another adopted child. Garrett is our first, well, besides our two real adopted children. But there was another girl that was on our ministry team named Haley. And she and Garrett are friends, and they were talking in the evenings. And one evening I went by and I was talking to her, and she said something about custodial battle or something. And I said, all right. I sat down and had to listen to her. And so then she became my other adopted child, but she's not a redhead like Garrett. But we had a connection with everybody out there, and I feel like our team had a connection. Josh and I weren't with them going out, but we were all together coming back, and we shared the similar experiences of being able to touch the Navajo people. And it is a huge area to be touched, for sure, because of all the Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons. It is an amazing thing. But thank y'all very much for letting us go, because it was a blessing to us.
All right, so I guess you guys are getting the impression that this wasn't a vacation, right? But it was an awesome experience, and I wanted to give Jackson a little bit to tell you, give him a minute or two to tell about his experience out there from a 9-year-old's perspective.
The Navajo trip was a great experience for me. I met Jay Rogers again. If you don't know, he used to be a deacon at our church. The funny thing is, we ran into him at the same hotel in Texas. It was probably one of the most dusty and life-changing trips I ever took. I missed Mississippi air on the first 2 days because I had trouble breathing. But it was a nice trip. All together in Steamboat, non-Steamboat, in the whole community of the 4 cities, we had about 115 people. And in Steamboat, we had 8 salvations. I also got to have Navajo fried tacos for the first time. They were delicious. I enjoyed VBS. We had about 8 kids in our class, and we during rec, they would get a little wild. They would jump around, and someone climbed on my back. It was a good time. Okay. Thank you for letting me go, Pastor Andy.
Okay, so I just have a couple more pictures so you don't end with the vision of stinky feet and dirt on your pants. So could you flip the slide, please, Joel? Okay, so here's a look at where we were working at Steamboat. Right behind Jackson's head, that's the front porch of the family that was hosting us, the Kayanis. They were Christians, and they offered up their house and their land to us for Vacation Bible School. So it was awesome that God was using them and letting us work out of there. Directly to the left of that, you see another building. That was their first home before they built the new home, and they turned their first home into the church. That was the sanctuary we had worship rally in. Slide, please. There is a picture of the Kayanis and also a man named Bob, who is our site leader and our cook. And they're, I guess, grandparent age. Their grandkids were in and at the VBS, and they were gracious hosts to us Navajo people there. Slide, please. Okay, there's a look at inside the sanctuary. You can see the cast iron stove that they used to keep warm in the winters during the services there, and the worship team in action at my site. Slide, please. There is a look at my classroom where I was teaching. 3 plywood walls and a folding table and folding chairs. It worked most days, but it was definitely not the VBS classroom I'm used to. Slide, please. There is my class, at least as many kids as showed up that day. Some days, because it was an outdoor classroom, it got so windy and dusty that we had to find a space indoors. So that's actually where the kids had their meals. We kind of appropriated that space so we could avoid the blowing dust and stay out of the wind. Slide, please. In addition to being a teacher of the 2nd and 3rd graders, I also got to drive the van route. Right there's a pretty good picture of some of the places I would drive to pick up the kids. Usually there was like a house, you see the 2-story house there, and then there's little like trailers or smaller huts out around that, and they're all family. And it was interesting, different from most neighborhoods around here. Slide, please. There's a look at our class at rec time. We were playing Red Rover, I think, and the kids, very athletic. They loved to play games, and it was good because they had lots of energy to burn. Slide, please. The VBS was good, and we got to give the gospel to these kids. Sometimes I wondered if it was getting through, but on the last day, I actually had this experience as I was finishing my van route, where I was like, did the kids understand anything that I said today? Just thinking to myself. And as I let the last couple kids off, one of them turned and looked at me and said, "I trust God. I trust Jesus." And I was like, "Thank you, God." It was awesome. So I knew that some of the kids were listening. But there's just some of the beautiful landscape. There's a lot of beauty in that land. A lot of, you can even see the green valley there. So there's life even in the midst of the desert there. Slide, please. And there was hospitality. They cooked food for us, our hosts, the Kayanis, and served us the Navajo tacos that Jackson was talking about. And, most of the people were very appreciative that we were there to teach the Vacation Bible School. They appreciated us coming out to do that. Slide, please. But it wasn't all good. That land it's haunted by sin. And, that was just steps from, that picture was taken just steps from where we were teaching our Vacation Bible School. A lot of people who need hope out there. And I hope that in the future, some of you are able to come out and join us and take the gospel to these people. Slide, please. This is a picture of the church that the pastor, Mark Williams, is going to be taking over. You can see the scorch marks above the door there. The door was replaced after they tried to burn the church down. But there's definitely resistance in the community to the gospel. And, God bless Mark and his family. They are going to minister there to the people who are trying to burn the church down. Slide, please. There's a picture of Mark and his wife, Penny. They were members of Michael Memorial just down the road, and he felt God's call to go out and be a lay pastor to the Navajo people. And I think it's great that he's getting established in the community there, a constant presence instead of people coming and leaving again. And we really look forward to working with Mark in the future. And here's the last slide. It was a painting that was in the church that we had our meetings in. And, it had the neat Navajo art and that kind of thing. But right there in the middle is the cross, and the arrow is pointing to Jesus and his sacrifice for us. And it was just a privilege to be able to go out there and to minister to them and spread the gospel. And I just want to say thank you very much for sending us. Thank you.